Okay, we are back for another installment of our Xamarin Android tutorial, building a game of war. And so I wanted to kind of pick up where we left off here with what is happening with our app. So just to get you caught up in case you haven't been quite following along, here we are with our war game. So let me kind of see if I can zoom in on this. I know that's a little blurry, I'm so sorry. It's kind of difficult to show the screen of your phone on one of these videos. Okay, but we can see the Start New Game button, and so we can hit the Start New Game button. The screen pulls up here. At first, we're not showing any cards. We may want to change that later and just have some kind of default item in there. We can see our current score values. Player 1, Player 2 doesn't come up as anything. We hit Deal Hand. We get our first two cards, and we see that we needed to correct that scoring because we left that off on our last video. But as you hit Deal Hand, it says whether Player 1 or Player 2 wins based on the weight values of those cards. So the first thing I want to do is fix that scoring problem. So we were, when we left off, originally assigning that score value to the deck, amount of cards in the deck, which we know isn't going to work for us. And we were doing it by the count value of the deck. So how are we going to keep score? Well, we'll just award 1 point for every hand won, which means we're going to have a way to keep track of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to our gameplay activity class, and I'm going to create two integers, Player 1 score and Player 2 score. So down here where we are awarding points, right, awarding 1 point for every hand won, we're going to do Player 1 score plus equals 1. And then instead of that deck count, we will use that value, and we'll do the exact same thing down here, but we'll use Player 2 score plus equals 1. And that will help us just keep track and count how many points each player essentially has earned. So that's a pretty easy fix, right? So we don't have to worry too much about that. So we also had this else condition down here, and I went ahead and commented this up. Is this the end of the deck? The game's over. We need to declare a winner. And so the winner is ultimately going to be the person who ended up with all of the cards. Right? If we go back to our website where we're viewing the rules, we can see in here that the player with the higher cards takes both piles, or no, we haven't implemented the war yet. The game ends when one player has won all the cards. So when we get to the end of the deck, which was our condition in here, the card counter being greater than or equal to 51. So when we are out of cards, which is something we need to work on. So right now, what we are doing is every time a player wins a hand, we're taking both of those cards, their card and the card that they've won, and we've placed it into their deck. And now that's creating two piles, essentially, which is what we did, remember, over here in the deck, right? We split that deck out. So what happens when we've gone through all the cards, but the player, they don't have all the cards, right? They haven't won all the cards. That's the winning condition of the game. So one of the first things I want to do to make this work like it should, because we're assigning both cards to that player's deck, but we need to make sure that we're also removing it from the other player's deck, because otherwise we end up with two instances of these cards in both decks. So looking at this, if player 1 wins, right, we know that selected card 1 has a higher value. We're giving them we're adding their own card to their deck, and then we're also adding player 2's card to their deck. I don't think we need to do this because we're technically never removing that card from their own deck. So we just need to make sure that they have the card from the other player, and then we need to remove from player 2's deck selected card 2. I'm going to test this because honestly I haven't looked at this logic. I'm just kind of thinking off the cuff here. So same thing down here. If player 2 wins, we want to keep player 2's card in their deck, which would be selected card 2. We're going to add the card from deck 1, and then from player 1's deck, we're going to remove their card. And I'm going to check the logic on this to make sure that this works the way that I think it's working. So I'm going to set a breakpoint right down here at the end of this section, and I'm going to run to see what I've got. Okay, so looking at my watch window down here, our original deck had 52 cards. That was great. We split them into 2 piles, and everyone started with 26. At the end of the first round, we can see that player 1 won the hand because they now have 1 more card, and player 2 has 1 less card. Right? So if I hit continue and proceed to deal hand again, I can see that player 1 won again, and so slowly player 2 should run out of cards as you test, or this will, start to balance out. We can honestly watch as I step through here, and I'm just hitting deal hand over and over again. Player 1 won 1 there, player 2 won, player 1 won. That sounds funny. Right? So you can just hit deal hand and continue over and over again and watch as the counts fluctuate. So that looks like it's working the way it's supposed to work. So before we move on to implementing our winning code, I want to go ahead and put in the game of war, itself. So if the cards are the same rank, right, it's war. Each player turns up 1 card face down, 1 card face up. The player with the higher card takes both piles or earns 6 cards. If the turned up cards are again the same rank, each player places another card face down and turns another card face up. So I'm feeling like this is going to be maybe another activity. I really hadn't thought about how I wanted to lay this out. We could do it in the same activity, and that might save us some time. So we need something in here that checks if the 2 cards are of the same rank. So here is where we are determining which card is higher. We're going to turn this into an else if, and so selected card 2 face value is higher than selected card 1 face value, right? So the opposite of this statement up here, we know selected card 2 has a higher value. And then we're going to say else if selected card 1 face value is equal to selected card 2 face value, then we know, the 2 cards have the same rank and it's war, right? That is the logic we're following. If the cards are the same rank, it's war. Each player turns up a card. We don't have to do the face down because we're just awarding cards where they belong. Okay, so during war, we need to, let's think about it. We need to turn up 2 cards, 1 for each player. And then the player with the higher rank cards takes both piles, which ends up being 6 cards. The winner gets 6 cards and points, right? Because we're awarding points. So it's that comes from the first set of cards, the face down set of cards, and the face up set for war, right? That's where those 6 cards and 6 points come from. Okay, so I want to build an alert dialog in Android since I'm going to use the same activity and the same view to do this in. You could open another view and set up your cards and everything, but in the interest of time, I'm going to build an alert dialog, and we use alertdialog.builder. I'm just going to name it alert. And so an alert dialog is like a little pop-up, pop-over message box that we could use in Android Xamarin projects. And so we do alert, set title, and then I'm just going to put war. And then in alert, you can set a positive button, and you can also set a negative button if you want, like OK cancel. And what do we want the button to say? I'm going to say let's play. And then sender alert. Oh no, I need the parentheses there. Oh, comma, parentheses. Yes, thank you, fingers. Sender alert. And then those are our arguments. And then this is a delegate, similar to the way that we do our buttons. One too many parentheses there. Let's play. Oh, one here. There we go. So this is where we put the war logic. So after they click OK, or let's play, which is our positive button, then this code inside of here is what will activate. So this is a very similar statement to what we do when we define a button, click delegate, and set up everything inside of those curly braces. So because the game of war could be played over and over again, where if the turned up cards are same rank, each player places another card face down, turns another card face up, player with higher card takes all 10 cards at that point, I think it's probably best if we come over here to our deck class and set up another list for war cards. And so as the game of war is played over and over and over again, we can put the cards into the war list, and then that's how we'll know which cards need to be assigned where. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take both cards that triggered the war and put them in the war list. So we have our deck, war cards, add selected card 1, and the same thing for selected card 2. And then we're going to remove them from the player's hands. Right? We don't know where ultimately they're going to end up, and we don't want to end up with duplicates. And so we'll have our player 1 deck, remove selected card 1. Oops, not remove, remote, remove. Okay. So we pull out the trigger cards, we're removing them from the player's hands, we're putting them in the war list, and then we're also going to pull, because each player is supposed to turn up 1 card face down and 1 card face up. So we're going to deal 2 new cards into our gameplay area, and we're going to pull out 2 cards to put into the war list that are basically forfeit to the winner. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So we're going to pull out 1 card from each player's deck to put into the war list as the face down cards. So the same thing that we did up here, we're going to do again. So up here where we have this card counter and we're grabbing the top 2 cards from the deck and etc., etc. So we'll need to implement or increment card counter to make sure that we are advancing that array 1 position. And then the same thing that we're doing up top. We pull those cards in, and now that's selected card 1 and 2. And we don't want to display them yet. These 2 cards we're going to put into the war list, and then we'll do the exact same thing to advance them 1 more to make sure that we are getting 6 cards into the war list for our first round of war. And so we'll do this exact same thing right here. And we'll do the exact same thing right here. So these are the two cards that triggered the war. These are the two cards that are the next cards at the top of each player's deck, so that makes 4. And now we need 2 cards from the top, or I guess 1 card from the top of each player's deck to check or to play war, right? These cards will be displayed. So we advance the counter again, we pull a card, we pull a card, we display a card, we display a card. So these 2 cards right here, the ones that we're displaying, are the ones that we're ultimately checking for our war condition. So the player with the higher cards takes all 6 cards, and so we basically have the same logic check that we're making up here. Determine which card is higher. That really kind of like screwed up my tabbing, didn't it? So then player 1 wins the war. And we have that same else if condition. I don't know why I typed else if. I'm just going to copy and paste the whole thing. So if that's true, then player 2 wins the war. Or they're the same, which is what triggered our war condition in the first place. Oops. The cards are the same, we play war again. And so if player 1 wins the war, then war is over. We can make a toast notification, and so I'm going to grab one of these. And I'm going to put player 1 wins the war. And if player 2 wins the war, we'll put that. So, if player 1 wins the war, then what we need to do is take the 4 cards currently sitting in the war deck, plus these 2 cards, and put them all in player 1's hand, and make sure player 2 doesn't have their card anymore. So we will transfer to deck of player 1 the selected card 2. We will remove from the deck of player 2. I'm getting some kind of keyboard lag. So we'll remove it from their hand. Then I want to put every card in the war deck into the hand of player 1. And then I want to award 6 points. So the player 1 score is going to increase by 6. So we do the exact same thing for player 2, just making sure that we do it correctly. So we want to, into the hand of player 2, put selected card 1, out of the hand of player 1, take selected card 1, and then from the war deck, put into the hand of player 2, and then increment player 2's score. Okay, so that should get us through 1 round of war. I'm going to come back to this condition statement right here, what if we have to play war again? Because one thing I want to do, or I have 2 things I want to do. During war, I don't want them to be able to hit this deal hand button. So I'm going to disable the button Because if they do, then it's going to screw our logic all up and it's going to not play war and we're going to advance to the next hand. It's going to screw everything up. So if they won, turn the deal button back on. If we're done with war. The other thing I want to do is move all of this wargame logic to its own method. So I'm going to pick this whole thing up. All this code in this else if right here. And I'm going to move it down here. War game, war logic. I don't really have a good name for it. Okay, some things we're going to have to bring in. We're going to have to bring in selected card 1. We're going to have to bring in selected card 2. We're going to make some public variables, so we're going to move the card counter up here. Button, yep. Oh. We're going to declare these out here. Actually not, no, that's not going to work. I know that's not going to work. We're going to have to redeclare them. I just want these in here. And the button. And I'm doing this because I want to be able to call this method when we're playing war. And I want to be able to call it recursively if we are calling war from inside war, which is in fact like a recursive step, right? Okay, so war logic. And we are passing selected card 1 and selected card 2. So down here, where we could potentially play war again, we are going to do the exact same thing that we just did here. I don't need the comments. But we're going to recursively call our method and pass in our selected cards to play the game all over again. Now, that was a lot of logic without testing, and I may have missed something, and maybe you saw it. But I think at this point it's good to go ahead and make sure that that works the way it should work. So I'm going to give this a test run with a breakpoint set here on my war logic method call and see if that works the way that I think it's going to work. Okay, so in testing, the first thing I realized, and I should have known it when I saw this was underlined, was we never initialize it, which I did this earlier. I totally screwed that up again. Alright, so make sure you got that in there. Also, I put this in here, and I think I forgot to show you, you do have to actually run that alert. So after the end of your delegate statement in our method, make sure that you have the show on there. Okay, another thing I forgot to do is we need to empty the war deck after, oh, we should do it in the for each. We could do it up here in the for each. So add the card into the player's hand. Can't spell today. Remove it from war deck. So we can do deck war cards. Remove. See. Because if we end up playing a second round of war in the same game, then those cards are already sitting in the deck, screwing things up, which is not what we want. Okay, good. Nope, that's totally a dummy move. You should not modify lists while you're iterating through them. I swear it's just been the greatest day making this video. I have made some weird mistakes. Okay, yes, 4 each. Put them in the player's hand. I'm only a bonehead on camera. Alright, yes. Don't screw with your lists while you're enumerating them. Alright, so we move it from the player's hand to, or into the player's hand, out of the war deck. I think that's probably the last logic error I'm going to come up with because all of this looked pretty good. Actually, I don't know why I'm being such a dingus about this. We can call the war cards clear method and just clear it out. Totally just dumps everything in the list. So we don't even have to worry about any of that. Alright, then the player is awarded 6 points. We turn the button back on, and then it takes us back to the regular game. And so go ahead and give that a test run. I think I've worked, shook all the bugs out of it. But let's see if it works the way that it should. Okay, one modification I'm going to make is this text view and where we're updating it. So it's probably better if we take that out there and update the score at the beginning of each hand. So we will grab that and we will grab this. And we will update here. Oops, not there, here. That way, when we are incrementing down or adding to our score down here at the end of war, we'll be able to see that update because we will update the score at the beginning of each round. Okay, so the last thing I want to set up is our winning condition. And so when the one player has won all the cards, so they have 52 cards in their personal hand, we know the game is over. Right now we're basing this off of card counter, which isn't what we want to do because card counter is just an increment of how many cards we've gone through so far. And so this else condition right now isn't doing what we want it to do. So instead of basing our gameplay condition on card counter, I changed it to look at the 2-player hands and determine if both of them are still playing with less than 52 cards. So if the count of cards in player 1 hand is less than 52, and the count of cards in player 2's hand is less than 52, then we know we're okay to play the game. If that's not true, then someone has 52 cards and the game is over. So if the player 1 count is greater than or equal to 52, then player 1 wins. Otherwise, we know it's player 2 and player 2 wins. And we can decide what we want to do. We'll probably take the deal hand button and turn it off so that they can't continue to hit it, and declare a winner, which I think I would like to use one of these alerts like I set up down here because I think they look nice. Oops. So let's say winner, player 1 wins. We'll just say okay. And then the same code down here, but player 2 wins. Okay, so let's look at our game so far. So we've got our start new game button, and we start a new game. Oops, have to actually click on it, huh? And then we deal hand. And so we can see the scores, and we can keep dealing the hand. Now, I don't know that I like that the toast shows up over the score. That's not so nice, but you can keep flipping through here and see how the game progresses. So far, player 1 is kicking butt. Now, when I was testing, I was manually triggering a war by making sure that the cards always matched. But you could always just test and see if you can get a natural, there we go, a natural war condition, right? Same card, same rank. So here's our alert, war, let's play. And so we click let's play. And I got an exception, so let's dig in. Okay, so we're stopped here in the middle of our war logic. Card counter is at 23. 2 cards in our war deck. So why did we get an exception? Index was out of range. Right here on line 170. Player 2 has 22 cards. So card counter tried to access too many items for what's in the list. So let's think about this for a second. We originally designed the card counter variable when we were using our 52 card set. Okay, so I came up with probably the elegant solution here, which is to stop using just an index-based counter and actually create a next of card that will increment through the lists that we're setting up. And so in the gameplay activity, we won't use this card counter anymore. We'll use deck player 1 next of, and then inside the parentheses, you can use this particular method to pull out the next of something in particular. But if you do next of null, it'll just pull the next position. So any place, like here, where we're using that counter, and in fact, it'll probably be easy to see if I just go pull card counter here. We will take out card counter and we will replace it with our new statement. So any place it was being used, we'll take it out. And this is a much more elegant solution to make sure that we're not going to get index out of bounds exceptions. And go ahead and give it a build, make sure it builds. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a little run through here and see if I have fixed the problem. Start a new game, deal the hand, we can keep dealing. Ooh. So my first card's not moving, I need to figure out why, but we can hit let's play. Player 1 wins the war. We can go check out why some of our cards are not updating. Maybe I just pasted the wrong statement in somewhere. So I like to put in breakpoints just to walk through the code and get an idea of what we're doing here. And so we can take a look at our starting decks, right? 26 cards each. So the first card for player 1 is a 4 of spades. And the first card for player 2 is a queen of diamonds. And so we can step through here, update player scores, and check out our 2 selected cards. And so selected card 1 is our 4 of spades. Selected card 2 is our queen of diamonds. All looks good there. Setting our image resources and then doing our check. So a queen is obviously going to be higher, so we come down to player 2 wins the hand. We make our toast. Player 2 takes possession of player 1's card. Yes, that's correct. Player 1 loses possession of their card. That's correct. And we can see our counts change. So now player 2 has 27 cards. Player 1 has 25. We award a point to player 2. End of game logic. And so looking at the screen, we can see the results of that hand. Now we're not getting the updated score until we hit deal hand again because of where I moved the score updater. If you don't like that, you can change it. It's up to you on what you want to do there. But I'm not seeing a place where walk through again. Alright, so the next 2 cards in the deck, we had a 10 of clubs. We still have the queen of diamonds, and we're pulling from this next up is pulling from the front instead of pulling from the back, is what I think is happening. Because we're still seeing the queen of diamonds. That's what's going on. It's not that it's not updating, it's that we're pulling from the wrong side of the array. That is an easy fix, because in a real card game, after you had played your cards, you wouldn't put them back on the top of your stack, you'd put them on the bottom of your deck. And so that's essentially what we need to do. So in our game logic, if player 1 wins the hand, they take control of player 2's card, player 2 loses their card, and so we need to take from player 1 and put their used card on the bottom of their deck. Yep, so to fix that, all we have to do is remove it and then re-add it, and that will take it from the front of the deck and put it on the back of the deck. And so we'll do the same thing down here for player 2. Don't need that. Oops. So player 2, take selected card 2. Okay. And then we're going to have an issue down here. We're adding those 2 cards to the war list. We're removing those 2 cards from the hand. Nope, I think we're good. So at this point, you should be able to play a game of war all the way to the end until we declare a winner. And I know this last video has been kind of long, but hopefully we have shaken all the last little bugs and fiddly bits out of it. But play your war game, check it out. Let me know what you think. If you're running into any problems, let me know. And then I may wrap this up with one more video to show you how to do that that last little bit where when we originally designed this game we said we would store information about previous games, and we'd set up a section on the main activity for storing the scores and stats of previous games. At this point, I'm kind of running out of time on this series, but let me know if you have any questions.